This is a good one. For once on our show, a song that came from no inspiration at all. It's just a jingle writer forcing himself to write a song on a lazy day where he was about to sneak off to the beach. Instead, he pushed himself to write a song that would become a masterpiece. He recorded a rough demo, played every instrument, and he ended up playing that rough recording for a lot of people. And in the end, instead of re-recording it, he just released that rough demo. Coming up, this one-of-a-kind singer and songwriter tells us the story of this controversial masterwork. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. What can I tell you? We interview the great artists of the rock era, and you never know what's in store from day to day, who's going to show up, what songs we're going to cover. Make sure that you subscribe so you never miss out. Click the bell, all that jazz. Check out our exclusive content on Patreon, including behind the scenes at our recent live events that we've done. So I'm so excited to bring you another episode from our series, Revelations, where featured artists take us for an inspirational and in-depth focus on their greatest songs and albums. I'd probably say it a little bit too much on this channel, but mainstream music is a mess in today's society. I mean, there's great music being made, but you won't hear it on Top 40 radio, or at least the top 10. Whereas the top 10 songs for any given week in the 60s, 70s, or 80s were about 70% classic and still heard today. But every once in a while, an up-and-coming artist or band releases a brand new song that climbs to the top of the charts, that blows our minds and reminds us that great songs can drop out of the sky at any time. And you know what? This classic song is proof that happens, and it can happen. Although it really didn't come from inspiration, it came from perspiration. At the time he was working as a jingle writer, Mark Foster of Foster the People wrote Pumped Up Kicks in an afternoon. In an afternoon where he would rather have gone to the beach, but instead he forced himself to write a song. And man, what a song. It would be the hit of 2011. It reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. And coming up next in our interview, Mark Foster tells the story of this song, including the process of putting it together, his thoughts on the lyrics, and his take on the controversy surrounding it since then. Very fascinating interview. Now, as we go into this, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. My favorite frames ever, wear them every day. Make sure to take advantage of the phenomenal deals Zenni always runs to design your own pair of frames, the color, the shape, the size, the style. And you can do that very easily and get those deals by downloading the Zenni app. Just download it onto your phone. Here is Mark Foster with the story of Pumped Up Kicks. I know that you started out as a commercial jingle writer. I remember the first time that I heard Pumped Up Kicks. It was before it became famous or anything. It was on your website. I knew, like, when I heard it, I was like, that's a number one hit. Like, it was undeniable. But before we get into that, what kind of brands and stuff did you write for? Tell me about your start in the industry a little bit.
You know, it's funny. I started working for this company a little bit. I had a home studio. I was kind of like independent. They would reach out to me, honestly, like maybe like twice a year if they had like a project they thought was right for me. And I was a barista. I was working at a coffee shop, working full time and just writing songs when I would get home. And honestly, I got to a point to where I had gone through so many, like gotten so close to like having like an opportunity to make a record and, played for Dr. Dre when I was like 23. And,
wow.
Aftermath wanted to do something back then. And then, I played for Jimmy Iovine and then like went to New York and showcased for Sony and played for Def Jam and all these labels. Like things would get real close and I was like, it's gonna happen. And then it would go away and it wouldn't happen. And so at that point, I was 25 and I basically was gonna, I don't want to say quit, but like I was going to do something like drastically different. My plan was to move to Turkey or to Berlin.
Wow.
And like I just didn't want to spend I didn't want to like spend my youth chasing something in LA without actually being able to like live life and experience what life was about and see the world and And I started to hit that point where I'd been out there for 8 years or 7 years already, and I've been working, like grinding, like every day. I would go there and work on. I remember that week had been particularly busy. I had like 3 or 4 different things that I'd had was composing for, and then staying late and writing every day. And I was just writing every day, whether I had something to say or not. I would just kind of stay and just write. I would just open up a session, load up a couple instruments, like, grab a piano, grab a guitar or whatever, and just write. And this one day, it was in the afternoon, 1 or 2 p.m., and I finished what I had to do for Mophonics. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I'm just gonna drive back to Silver Lake, which from Venice to Silver Lake without traffic is probably like good 35 minutes. With traffic, it's like an hour and a half. So I was gonna beat rush hour. I was like, I'm done. I'm just gonna go home. I'm tired. And I just kind of sat there, and this thought came in, and it was just like, you're here. You're already here. Like, just write something. Just pull it up. Just start something. Just like see what happens. Like, give it an hour. If the spark's in the room, and that's kind of something like I've kind of like learned to to try to feel that it's like, if like give it a shot, throw something at it for half an hour or an hour, like write. And if that spirit of creativity comes in the room, you'll know it. And if it does, and if it decides to sit with you, then stay. Then you'll be there for 15 hours.
Right.
It's like you're not going to leave before that thing leaves. So that was.
You wrote it in Logic.
I wrote it in Logic. I pulled up a drum kit. I pulled up a couple weird like effects and things that I'd never really learned, because for me it was just I was just writing, just exploring Logic. Like I wasn't, I grabbed a drum kit that I'd never played with before. I went through like some weird soft synth instruments, and like the bass, and that's actually it's like a soft synth guitarone, like from like ranchero music. Which I'd never played with before. I was like, what's that sound like? And like kind of loaded that up, and just like I usually start with drums and just boom, 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 and like kind of have that beat laid out, and then it was the guitar on was next, just boom, 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 and kind of all, and it really, it's a really simple song instrumentally, and when you hear it, there's really only like 4 things, 4 instruments in the song. And then lyrically, that was just one of those songs where when I started, I wrote the chorus first, and originally it was kind of a confidence song. It wasn't like a gun. It was all metaphor, but a run from my gun, like you better run from what, like you haven't seen what I've got yet. You know what I mean? Like kind of a confidence thing, almost kind of taking from like hip hop, and like kind of like that's the spirit of what that is. But then when I started singing the verse, I just kind of turned on the mic, and like a lot of times, like again with the spirit of creativity, like I find it's like interesting to just let a stream of consciousness come in and see what kind of happens naturally, what comes out. And that first verse came out, and I was kind of just like, I was in another world. I didn't have any idea what I wanted to say, but then just Robert's Got a Quick Hand. That first line came out, and I was like, oh, like this is like a narrative. Like this, the whole thing just switched towards like this is a story. And the first verse was a freestyle, basically that just shot out. Kind of flipped the song from a confidence thing to something that was like
Truman Capote. You approached that. I thought that was really interesting, because instead of looking at it from the victim side, you were trying to get in the head like Truman Capote did In Cold Blood, and walk in his shoes. And the lyric, he's got a rolled cigarette hanging out his mouth. He's a cowboy kid. The imagery there, I love that kind of imagery. It's like Springsteen or Dylan. They create this atmosphere, the narrative, like you said. I know that you had said in the past that you were reading about how youth suicide and mental illness and things had really skyrocketed in the last decade or so.
Sure.
And that kind of started to take over. Tell me a little bit about that.
I think walking in like, someone else's shoes that are under extreme circumstances is like an interesting thing as a writer or like an actor, like a method actor walking in, taking on the role of somebody that's going through some kind of psychosis that, in an extreme environment. It's going to bring out really interesting colors of humanity, that you don't really see on a normal day-to-day basis. So I think with that song, I think that was, you know, just that was, I guess, the draw for me to like I said, the first verse kind of defined itself, you know, and that just kind of came out. But then the next day, I came in and wrote the second verse out with the pen and had to kind of figure out what, you know, where the story was going and what was really going on with the kid. But
because there's no actual violence in the song. It's interesting because
it's more about the headspace. It's not about
right.
anything. The kid could have, like, who knows? Like, kid probably didn't end up doing anything. You know what I mean? It's like one of those thoughts that people have. Yeah. People have thoughts all the time. It's like you're driving your car and you're driving over a bridge and you have that thought like, what would it be like to drive off this bridge?
Right.
You're not suicidal until you actually do it.
I've heard you talk about it, but to me and to a lot of people, the song meant a lot because it did bring out a voice to be able to talk about things. My son at the time was about 13 years of age when it came out, and he started asking me some questions about it. And it was actually really refreshing to be able to talk about certain things because parents, we need to talk to our kids about safety and guns, bullying, all those kinds of things that happen. I mean, the second verse when you said daddy works a long day and it talks about dinner's in the kitchen is packed in ice. I mean, that's really kind of speaking to the latchkey kid generation coming home. Dad is gone or abusive or not around, mom's not around. What is it? Where do you go from here kind of thing? The media always kind of puts their spin on things, right? Of course. But you go back and you look at songs in the past, like Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison Blues, shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. And that's almost a thought like, what would it be like? And then also Bruce Springsteen in Nebraska. I mean, that whole album is about kind of looking at it from alienation. What happens when a community becomes alienated? When a song comes out and it has that kind of impact, it just puts it out there and it gets you to think and to discuss and to talk about it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's important. I think art in general is one of the only things, I think art's the highest form of communication. You know, you could write a 25,000 word paper dissecting a 8-line poem, you know?
Yeah.
And the information packed in that, or packed into a painting, or packed into certain music or a film, that like a feeling, you're dealing with feelings and thoughts and emotions that are, you know, they're not, you know, you can't articulate them with just a word, like, you know.
And there's so many different interpretations. That's what's cool about it. Like, I've heard so many different theories about the chorus, pumped up kicks, or they talk about Reebok's pumps back in the day that kids had that they used to kill for the shoes or whatever. But it's just fun to hear different interpretations because at least you're listening. You're not just using music as it's just playing in the background and this is kind of something to chill out to. You're actually deeply thinking about it. It makes you think.
Mm. Well, there's a couple actually this year. I feel like Father John Misty does that. You know, there's a song on I Love You, Honey Bear on that record. Holy shit, that's like some of my favorite lyrics like in the last 10 years. Courtney Barnett, I feel like is a real poet.
It's a Monday, it's so Monday.
When I look at like pop music, you know, it's becoming so
baby,
whitewashed, like homogenized and like just kind of like, yeah, it's like it's becoming sterilized, you know, or it's like, I think you look at like back in like the 70s and the 80s and stuff, is that the people that had the biggest platforms were actually saying the most interesting things.
People really want it. They really do. They want those songs that get you to think. I mean, this song, Pumped Up Kicks, I'm kind of a chart geek. I used to read what went to number one, but this was the only song at that time in history that went number one on the dance charts and number one on the alternative charts. It had never been done before. The crossover appeal,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, of so many different people who heard it. And of course, number 3 on the pop charts, but it was number 1 in many other countries. And so it resonated with people all over the world. And also was the biggest song on Spotify that year. And that was the first year that Spotify released in the US, and that was the most streamed song on Spotify. Rolling Stone, it finished number 2 in their poll or whatever. So, I mean, it really was one of the most powerful songs of this century so far. And I think it's because you just have this way of writing, and it's all over this album. And you talked about living with these different characters, and And it very much feels a part of like Hell on a Beat is kind of about the drug culture and Hollywood and all that kind of stuff. But very much this album is, it's just, sometimes a record comes out and it kind of speaks for the times. To me, that's what this record was.
Thank you.
It is, yeah.
I answered a lot of letters from moms being like, how dare you write something like this, you know? And I would just like, and I would have to write back and be like, well, listen, like, you know, here's like what's really going on with the song. Like, this is where I'm coming from, you know? Maybe use this as an opportunity to talk to your kid like this instead of be afraid to like tackle a subject like this, you know? This is like an open door for you.
Right.
You know?
Well, we have to ask the question, why is this happening more so in the last 10 years?
Well, I think the other like really, I mean, interesting thing, you know, for me kind of during that time was just like, I think kind of the hypocrisy too, where it was just like, it was the fact that the song was done by a band that felt breezy and summery that I think made people angry. Yeah. You know, because it's like, wait, like you turn on like, you know, you listen to hip hop, it's like turn on the stations, but they've been talking about stuff like way, like on the nose, like I'm actually gonna kill, like I killed this guy last night, like crazy misogynistic lyrics and like crazy violent lyrics that are like held to a completely different standard. Yeah. Which I found was like really interesting that like that world like you know basically had carte blanche to be able to like talk about anything that they wanted. It could be, you know, it could be like the most like extreme version of violence, you know, but because the song had guitars in it. And because it had that just really smooth had a breezy kind of melody. Yeah, exactly. That like, you know, it was held to a different standard. So I find it all interesting, you know. Yeah. I love the controversy. It actually did tap into, I remember having certain feelings as you know, being bullied in high school and having thoughts about, man, I'd love to frickin', you know, knock that guy off his pedestal, that jock that's been picking on me kind of thing. Yeah. And at least this song gives you like, there are other people that feel this way. And that's why your band and bands like The Smiths and The Cure meant so much to alienated teenagers because you're not alone. You're not alone, exactly. Even though it's not very old as a song, it's been covered many times. I mean, Owl Eyes hit the top 30 in Australia with it. The Kooks, you know, did a version. Weird Al did a little tribute to it. All the other kids with a pumped up picture, better run, better run. The one that you probably liked the most was Weezer. Tell me about that story about you and Rivers, because he actually taught you a song on the guitar, right? Back in the day. Yeah, I first moved to LA and I was just at some house party and I would bring my acoustic guitar with me everywhere, basically in my car or whatever, like anywhere I went. And I had just started writing songs. I hadn't even really learned how to write a song where I was like singing and playing at the same time. So I was writing these like instrumental songs on a guitar. And I was like talking to Rivers and like I ended up getting my guitar and I was like basically cornered him. I was like 18 or something, you know, I was just like, hey, I want you to listen to what I'm working on. And like I played him this like instrumental, which must have been just like hell for him. You know, just some 18-year-old kids playing me an instrumental at a party right now. Like, but he was like so polite. And he listened to it and then I was like kind of talking to him about Say It Ain't So, because that was like another song that I remember when I heard that, just like, and it's still like, I think like just like one of the best songs like ever written. And he's like, oh yeah, it's easy. And he like grabbed it and he kind of showed me how to like properly, how to play it. To wake up, I think, you know, we were on tour or something. I woke up one day to see like a video of Weezer covering Pumped Up Kicks. And it was just kind of a full circle moment. And I got to tell him the story and talk about it, you know. Well, it's been used a lot. Entourage, Gossip Girl, CSI New York, Friends with Benefits, and a lot of different movies. And Taylor Swift and Zac Efron did a little parody of it on Ellen. You probably saw that. Yeah. When a song kind of hits that pop culture vernacular, I mean, just huge. Do you remember the first time you heard it on the radio? Do you remember where you were? Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, we were in rehearsals. We were getting ready for like a first kind of regional tour, and K-Rock, I think, was going to play it at. They were going to play it, like debut at like a certain time, like 1 p.m. or whatever. So we all kind of stopped what we were doing and and turned on K-Rock, you know, and we just like sat there and listened to it, you know. Yeah, so it was weird. A lot of firsts that year, you know, first time on tour, first time having a song like that on the radio, first time playing festivals, first time, I mean, just first, like every day had like 5.
A new thing.
Like a new thing, you know, which, and I remember it's funny too, because I remember a lot of people coming up, like our A&R guy, or people that have been in kind of the music biz for a while, just coming up and being like, look, enjoy this. Like really, there's nothing like the first time. Like really enjoy this. Isn't this great? Like Dave Grohl, I remember talking to me, isn't it great? Isn't it great? And I remember in my head just being like, yeah, like I was so focused on trying to build something that had longevity that it was like, I didn't really get to catch my breath until like a year and a half. I think it was playing Lollapalooza, or there was, yeah, maybe it was like months after playing like Coachella and all these things. It's like maybe like a year and a half after where I just felt we're gonna be okay.
We're gonna be all right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's one moment in my life that was probably the most powerful conversation I've ever had to date. Was with my dad. I was 17 and I was didn't know what I wanted to do. All my friends were applying for colleges and they all knew, like they all had their jobs picked out, colleges, whatever, knew what they wanted to do. And I was lost, and I was this close to joining the Air Force. Like I took my ASVAB test, I had a job picked out. I was like, I didn't really want to go to college. Like I was doing photography and stuff like that, but none of it really felt right. And one morning I was talking to my dad. It was a Saturday morning. I remember it so clearly. We're in the kitchen, and I was just like, Dad, like, what am I gonna do? Like, none of this makes sense. I like, you know, went down the options. College feels like this, you know, and the military, like the recruiters were calling my house like every day, like trying to get me to sign on the dotted line. This is right before 9/11. You know, so like we were, you know, a time of peace. I had this cool job picked out. It was a geophysicist at the Air Force, which I don't even know what the hell it did, you know, but it came with like level 1 security clearance. So I was like, that's cool. Like maybe I'll be in the CIA one day. But none of it felt right. And he was just like, Mark, you've always loved music. It's always been something your whole life that you've enjoyed doing. He's like, why don't you go to LA or New York and just give it a shot? Just pursue it, just try it. He's like, after a year, you know, you'll know if you have what it takes or not. And after a year, you'll be 19. You can always join the military, you know. And it was like and this light bulb just went on. And I just looked at him, and like I knew that was exactly what I needed to do. And I had never considered it before, because for me, growing up in Cleveland, when I looked at like a professional musician, it was the guy at Guitar Center that was like trying to teach me the proper way to play Purple Haze. I just like I never like knew that it was a possibility, you know, like being on a stage, you know, in front of a ton of people. Like I just never considered it even until he said that. And it was like the encouragement of that put the wind in my sails.
You got to do what you love. You got to chase your dreams. Like if you don't have that, what do you have?
Yeah. So like I always, you know, we played in Cleveland a few months ago and he was there and I got to like tell that story from stage and thank him. It's just like one of those things. It's just so deep, because I mean, my life would have been drastically different if he had never said that. That was like therapy for me, man. I'm like, I'm gonna go back and like meditate on what we just talked about.
Man. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Mark Foster and this modern day masterpiece. What are your thoughts and your memories of the song? Do you remember the first time you heard it? What's your take on the meaning? Let us know below. If this content resonates with you, we invite you to subscribe, join our community, help us keep the music alive. That's the idea. And pick up a 1984 shirt as well. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.